Welcome back to PICT Voices, the interview series conducted by faculty of the Paris Institute for Critical Thinking with notable members of the broader PICT community. Our goal is still to present our community with a variety of voices across the spectrum of the humanities and critical creative thinking. My name is Kristof Vanhoutte, and today I am joined by Karl van den Broek, editor-in-chief of the Flemish independent news website that focuses on investigative journalism, Apache. Hello, Karl, and welcome.
Hello.
As the short introduction might have made clear already, today we want to have a closer look to some aspects of the world of information. And let me start with a term that has become all too present regarding this world today, namely fake news. Now, Karl, how big has this plague become? Can we speak here of a pandemic as well?
Well, I'm always a bit reluctant to talk about fake news because it has existed since the beginning of humanity. People have been telling each other lies since the days of Adam and Eve, I think. So it's not so much the problem that there is a lot of fake information, fake news circulating in the world. It's the speed with which it is circulating through the mobile internet, the social media, etc. But it's also when does fake news become dangerous? It's when people that the audience looks to for their authority, like political leaders or opinion leaders or academics, also are engaged in this information war, let's say. And I think when people cannot trust newspapers anymore, cannot trust the academic world anymore, and do not, then there is a lot of there is a big danger. And the reason why they are not trusted is because people like Donald Trump, but also other politicians, are discrediting these institutions that we think are the guarantee for the truth, and the truth is a very difficult word to use in this context. But if people cannot trust these institutions that they look at when they are in doubt, then fake news become very, very dangerous, of course.
Yeah, indeed, I think you're absolutely right here. Fake news is a very problematic concept, also because, like you say, it's very old, but it's also a very plastic concept, which in the end says everything and says nothing. That's why also I think it functions really well. But even if it might not be the best means to tackle the world of information, I think one cannot hide the fact that there are some serious problems in journalism. If I just think of one thing in today, what is happening, for example, regarding COVID, mainstream journalism has suddenly become what I consider the mouthpiece of the various governments and their functionaries, stopping to be what one should consider as their critical function and their mistrusting part of society that is a fundamental part of an open democracy. But even just not focusing on COVID, simply going beyond and going in a much more general terminology, I think there's something of a more paradoxical phenomenon that one can see and that one can find easily and discover easily today regarding newspapers. And that is that on the one hand, they're much more colored and partisan, but then paradoxically, they're also all coming to the readers from almost the same angle. Well, and again, here, I think that there's this critical function that is disappearing today. Of what used to be the basic function of the third form of information.
I think there is the biggest problem is the economic model of newspapers and printed media has completely collapsed the last 10-15 years. And that is also because of the internet. The newspapers were very powerful and they were very well balanced in the ways they were financed. When you were an editor of a newspaper, you get your money from your readers, you get your money from publicity, advertisements, all kind of people, companies that wanted to let the public know which products they are selling, and it was a very lucrative business, the news media business, from the 19th century all the way to, let's say, 2010. But then the mobile internet came, Facebook came, and they are working like parasites, of course. They're using the content that is made by professional journalists that have to be paid by the editors. They're using it on their platforms, and they don't have to pay for it. If I write an article and my friends put it on Facebook and it spreads all over the country, which I always hope, and I'm very glad about it, but it's Facebook that's selling publicity on the pages with my content and with the content of Apache. So that's the revenue of newspapers and editors of printed press collapsed in the last 10, 20 years, also because they misjudged the internet. When the internet came in the beginning of the 21st century, newspapers made their digital content almost free. And that, of course, combined with the fact that the revenue from publicity collapsed, made that there was a sort of a perfect storm. And now they are trying to catch up, and they are asking people to pay for subscriptions. You see that also on television. Cable network television, which was huge in the United States, CBS, ABC, etc. They are struggling because nobody is buying any publicity on the television anymore. And now, who are the big players? It's Netflix, it's Apple TV, it's Amazon. The people, and they work with a model where you pay a subscription, and there is no commercial messages on TV. So, if the economic environment in which the newspapers have to function is becoming much more difficult, then you see that the biggest fish in the water are eating the small fish. And that's the problem with journalism. We used to have 44 editors of newspapers in Belgium in 1960. Now there's only 3. There are countries where there's only 2. In Ireland, for instance. And that puts a big strain on, let's say, the pluralism in the press, the voices that you hear. But it also makes it the economic reasoning behind the media is that you want to sell you target the audience that has money. You're targeting the middle class, but nobody is making newspaper for poor people. But they are the majority of the world. Poor people are still poor people. People having less than the medium income are much, the 99%, as they were called, are much bigger crowd than let's say the 20 or the 30%. But they don't have any money, and that's where the economic laws, the economic conditions that now are functioning for the press are having a huge impact on the content. And the OECD already in 2010 said that the free market is no longer capable of sustaining a pluralist media landscape, and and also the Council of Europe has made recommendations for that, and they're calling on governments to support the media, and because otherwise there will be a big democratic deficit.
So I think you've pointed out 2, I think, important points here that I had also thought about. So on the one hand, there's the funding, and you say also that the states are being called out to fund and to help explore and expand again this almost oligarchy of newspaper and of informations. But then on the other hand, you also mentioned Facebook and social media. So, because my thought was, isn't the fact that people can interact more easily with the news and can also inform much more easily a journalist or a friend who works in information of news, couldn't that also be a helping hand in offering more?
Yeah, of course. At the beginning of the internet, everybody thought that we would go to paradise, that information would circulate freely. Everybody would be able to inform himself or herself, and that we will live in a better world. And that didn't happen. But on the other hand, the organization I work for, Apache, is only possible because of the internet. We cannot make a newspaper that has to be printed every day and put in everybody's mailbox. That's much too expensive. expensive. We are making a quality news site with a few €100,000, let's say, and that's completely impossible if you want to make a newspaper. So it's because of the internet that also there are much more outlets, but they stay under the radar and they have difficulties to grow. But still, in every country, every big democracy, there is. You have in the United States platforms like Salon.com or Politico that's changed the way that the big newspapers are writing about politics. Also in France, you have Mediapart, you have the Correspondent in Holland. So it is possible now to build digital media that are really providing quality. So I'm not so pessimistic about all this, but the problem is that the conservative forces in media, and that's the printed press, they call for the governments to help them to stay afloat. But the government shouldn't sustain, let's say, printing press owners. They should sustain the freedom of the press and the media. If you are, let's say, advocate a certain ideological stance, you should be able to make your own newspaper, as it was the case in the 19th and the 20th century. And but now people with a lot of money, and I'm talking billionaires, are able to start a newspaper. It's impossible to do that without loads and loads of money.
So you said that the states were called upon helping in the funding. You claim that they're not doing that?
Well, they're doing it in the wrong way. In Belgium, they're giving money to the post service to put the newspapers in our mailbox every morning for free. But that's, of course, disturbing the level playing field for all the other digital media. We don't get any kind of support from the government. Sometimes we get a small subsidy for a project we want to do, but there's no structural subsidy. And it's going out of hand in Belgium because the publishers of newspapers, and there are three big companies that are still active in that sector. They have so much money that they are buying up all the newspapers in Holland and also in Ireland and in Scandinavia. So they have huge amounts of money, and they, of course, you're creating a sort of artificial bubble in which they can survive. But the day that the state is cutting these subsidies, and Europe is very critical about it, then we risk losing our newspapers. They should be innovating. They should be working towards a new business model, which will be more digital. And if they don't do that, they will be even worse for the freedom of the press. Because, of course, I don't want these big newspapers to disappear. And that's not my aim, of our aim. But we just want a level playing field, that we will have the same support in the fields that we need support, like the developing our website is very, very expensive. But we'd have to do it on our own. And we don't have any money to do that in a good way, I think.
On the other hand, and I'm now playing the advocate of the devil, if the politicians who are supposed to fund critical information, if they do that and not by simply funding the postal service, then they're actually going to get more people who ask questions that they probably don't want to be asked.
Well, there is a good way to fund journalism, but also arts and culture, and that's there are two ways. You can do it in an indirect way, where you have a system where the general public gives money to the newspaper it prefers, and he can deduct that from its taxes. That's the way in the United States a lot of public services are funded through non-profit organizations. You have that also in Holland and in Anglo-Saxon countries. In France and in Belgium and in Germany, we have the habit of giving direct subsidies, but it's not the state, it's not the minister, it's not the politicians who decide. It's a peer-reviewed system. So you have specialists who give advice to the government, and it's not the Minister of Media who decides which newspaper gets funding. So it's in between. And Julia Cagé, who is accidentally also married to Thomas Piketty, she wrote a good study about how to fund the media. And you have to have three sources of money, and that's first of all the readers. That's most important. You have to sell your subscriptions. You have to sell the newspaper in the newsstand. On the second hand, you have to have the state that subsidizes, that gives money to projects, to let's say organizations that fund more difficult kinds of journalism, like investigative journalism. And then you need tax-deductible gifts. And if that system, it's a system like it works very well in the United States to fund the universities. And American universities are the most powerful in the world. So but you have to have an equilibrium between these three sources of income. Otherwise, there is always one element that becomes too dominant. It may be the commercial aspect, that you're making bad newspapers because you think they will sell more, or it can also be the government that would be very, you will try to write less critical articles because you are funded by the government. And also, if you're only funded by let's say foundations or organized citizens, then maybe you become too biased. You understand what I mean? Then you will write. If you are funded by, let's say, people who are advocating left-wing politics, or I don't know what, or right-wing politics, then you will be too much under the influence of their funding. So you have to be able to get your money from all different angles and different sources.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So if I can ask maybe a provocative question, what do you think could be a concrete step towards a solution?
Well, I think the first thing is we have to be very careful to when I hear politicians say we have to fight fake news, then I'm very scared who is going to decide what is fake news, and I hope it won't be the government. It has to be a self-regulating practice. Like you have in medicine, it's not the politicians who decide which pharmaceutical product is. Then on the other hand, you need a level playing field. Every player has to have the same opportunities to start his own media company. But on the other hand, it will be necessary from that public money, if it's directly paid by the state or indirectly through tax-deductible gifts, you need a system that, let's say, protects the media from the volatile market, and because otherwise it will be. There will be a lot of newspapers coming and going, and etc. And on the other hand, the most important thing is, of course, we need laws that protect freedom of expression and freedom of the press. And all over the world, they are threatened. I think also in Europe there is a lot of tension because of the terrorist attacks. In every European countries, we have restrictive laws now, or more restrictive laws than before, that are hampering the freedom of journalism, and that's very, very disturbing.
Mm-hmm. It's quite not really surprising, but quite interesting to see how we at PICT are confronted with very similar issues as you in Apache of being an alternative voice in the whole educational system that sometimes comes up against the same walls.
In academia, it's the same problems you have. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
You have the same issues with funding. You have the same issues with other people who become suddenly experts who have no knowledge at all about a certain topic, but then suddenly become the voice boxes of your specific field, and then you see that there's nothing to say. But so it's quite interesting to see how these critical investigative instruments work as well in the academia as in information-based world. But if I may ask one final question, and it's probably a little bit more dedicated to you guys at Apache, but I think you're just one case amongst many. So I think there's one final aspect that we haven't talked about, and that's the problem of silencing, not just funding, but also silencing. And I know that there have been attempts to silence your investigations, either by trials or even by obliged withdrawals of articles through the courts. Could you maybe say something more about the situation of Apache itself first, about these court trials and about these attempts of silencing and how they work, and then maybe also if you are aware of other situations in other countries of very similar cases, maybe you can say something about those as well, so to inform our listeners.
Well, I must say, in Belgium, we are at the top 5 of countries where the freedom of the press is still guaranteed. We have the most liberal and the best law for the protection of sources. The police or the judges cannot ask a journalist who his sources are. So that's unique in the world. I think only Iceland and Belgium have such a good law to protect the sources of journalists. But and also to attack a journalist before court, it's a very if you read the Constitution of Belgium, it's very, very difficult. But we are seeing now that they are using other means in our judicial system to attack us. They are filing civil lawsuits against us because they say that our articles are damaging them, are costing them money. If we attack people who are, let's say, in the real estate sector, which is the case, they are saying your article is hurting our business, and so we file a civil case. We won that civil case 2 years ago. Then we're also doing undercover journalism, which is a very light form of undercover journalism. We just filmed people going to a restaurant on the street, and on the sidewalk of the street. We filmed that, and they are filing complaints against that as well. But now, which is much more disturbing, there is a procedure in Belgium that, for give you an example, if you're my neighbor and you're trying to cut off a tree, and that tree is threatening to fall on my house, I can go to a judge and say, stop him. And the judge can do that without going and giving you the opportunity to give your side of the case, because there is an imminent danger. And that's what they're using now. We write articles and they go to a judge, and the judge sentences us to remove the article immediately. And if we don't do that, we have to pay 10,000 euros. And then only a month later, this is treated in a normal court where we can put our arguments forward. And every time it happens to journalists, the journalist wins in the end. But of course, it's a lot of stress. It costs a lot of money to pay lawyers. It happened now 4 or 5 times in the last years, and it's even so that Didier Reynders, who is now the European Commissioner who has to safeguard the democratic values of the European Union, he published a report last week, and Belgium is mentioned in the report, and the only example in there is Apache. It is also the Council of Europe has asked Belgium to take measures to prevent this kind of intimidation of the press. And I'm not sure if the new government is going to do that, because it's very difficult. Because everybody, of course, has the right to defend himself. If I am attacked in a newspaper and people are writing lies about me, I also think that I have to be able to defend myself. But there are a lot of mechanisms that people can use to defend themselves against journalism. But now, to ask a judge to remove an article is pure censorship, which is prohibited by the Constitution of Belgium. So that's very, very disturbing. On the other hand, I must say that our readers, the audience, and also a lot of people, opinion leaders in Belgium, are supporting us in this struggle. So we're not alone, and it raises a lot of sympathy for what we're doing as well. So I'm not saying that we're benefiting from this, but it doesn't make us weaker either. It makes us stronger, because we are pushing where it hurts, and that's what that's proven. If it was just we were just insulting people or writing fake news, then it would be very easy to get a judge and to get us condemned. But it's not happening. Every effort they make to silence us through justice is revoked, is rebuked, because we win every time. So they're using these unorthodox means to intimidate us, and that's the proof that we're on the right track, I think.
Yeah, I believe so as well. So thanks for being with us, Karl, and all the best with Apache. I will keep following you, and for all the people who read Flemish or Dutch, please go to the site apartje.be, because it's really, really good. And to the listeners, also a big thanks. You are much more numerous than we had expected when we started with these podcasts, so we thank you a lot. And this gives us a lot of strength to continue. So my name is Kristof Vanhoutte, and we from PICT hope to find you again all very soon for your next PICT Voices episode. Goodbye and thank you.